Hi, so in this video, we're going to look at how you can use Whiteboard.chat to gamify your lessons and also build interactive assignments along with some features like the autocorrect option where students can work on assignments asynchronously but get instant feedback as well. So I have some sessions recorded where I am actually making these lessons. So I'll walk you through them and demonstrate how you can use these features. So let's start with an activity where I'm trying to create a question based on ratios. So here, the idea is to not just give a question, but also try and incorporate something that's interesting, like some real life application into it, so that the student has to think beyond just the computational idea of solving ratios. Notice here, I'm sort of creating these boxes, which are called drop zones. It's very important when you're trying to build an assignment that can be auto-corrected. So here, you can go to tools and then you'll have the option called drop zone. And yeah, we'll look at it, how that works. So notice how in each of these objects, I am sort of going to create clones of it. And in a moment, you'll see that I'll be enabling student move, right, for all of these. So I'll click on the objects and I'll be, enable student move. By default, in the instructor board, anything you create, any object, cannot be moved or resized or changed by a student. So we want to avoid that because we want students to be able to drag these objects onto those boxes. So I'm enabling them. And right now I'm trying to figure out how do I have just a single answer, because I don't want different alternatives so they can put off the autocorrect. So I just want to make sure that there's just one answer option. So I'm just managing the notes that I provide to the students, the bills. Okay, once I have that, I'm going to add them into the answer options. Okay, I've sort of changed my mind there. Let's see. Right, so notice how I'm adding the right answer onto the boxes. And let's see. Okay, so 20 on for Alex, 25 for me. And now I'm right clicking, going to add answers and points right at the top, right? And then I'm going to add the number of points you want to get, you want to award the student for getting it right. And as soon as I do that, notice how the notes, the bills disappear. It hasn't gone away, it just has stored it into its memory, right? So whenever the student does it, it can be corrected. So here's a quick demo of that activity. So this is what the student would see. Okay, so first I'm gonna, get some random wrong answer. Let me get this wrong and let's see how this works. Now notice the student cannot do the correction, right? The correction has to be initiated from the tutor. Later on, I'll show you how, if you want the student to get instant feedback, how there's another option that can be added onto this activity. So let me go to the tutor, and the tutor in actions, you'll see autocorrect all boards. So I'm going to do that. That should correct all the boards. So let me go back, and it should take a moment, a couple of seconds maybe, and it should update on what the result is. There we go. So we get both of them wrong, it's indicated. So now let me just update that so that it's correct. So I believe that should be 20 and we should have 25 here. Let me do that. And now again, we go to the tutors end, the instructor board, and then autocorrect once again. And in the second attempt, now it should recorrect and give us an update. All right, there we go. So now everything's good. So you have all your 10 points. It also shows the percentage. Here's another video of me creating an activity. This is an activity related to geometry. So basically, you can see here in the shapes option, when I have selected a triangle, it allows me to assign two angles, which gives me a geometrically accurate triangle. I feel that's one of the neat features here, because especially when I do lessons in geometry where students have to find missing angles, things like that, it's helpful to have a visually accurate triangle or a visually accurate shape, because then students are able to build on the intuition regarding the size of the angle and also justify the results that they get. So that's a really neat feature here. So yeah, right now I'm just building up the shapes, marking the dimensions. And also let me walk you through the background behind creating this. When I did it, it was perhaps 2-3 days ahead of an exam, so I wanted students to remind themselves of the useful formulas that they had to memorize, and also remind them to pay attention to the little details like units of measure and stuff like that. So I wouldn't have time to intervene because it's just close to the exam. So the purpose of this was to have an assignment that I could send out to all my students. They'd do it on their own time, right? And the convenient feature here is by enabling autocorrect and all those features that we've seen earlier, the student gets instant feedback, right? And to see whether they're right or wrong, they get to fix it and then see instantly again whether they got it right in the second or third attempt. And that's from the student's end. From my end, I can see whether they got it right. Are they on the right track? Where do they stand? What are the gaps, right? So right now I'm creating drop zones as placeholders for the answers. And then I'm going to add the answers so that they can drag. Now, one of the annoying things I find here is I've got to enter all of them and also enable student move for each and every answer option, because that's when the student gets to move it. So sometimes I just forget it and then the student isn't able to move it at all. So that happens from time to time, but yeah. Now you might think this is time consuming as well, because it does take quite a bit of time rather than having your traditional worksheet and distributing them. But here on the long run, you get instant feedback, and that's the whole idea behind this. Now, one of the drawbacks of having drop zone is you only have one specific answer. So you can't have variants of an answer that will be accepted. So you can't submit two different versions. Or equivalent answers aren't supported. You can't have equivalent versions. So you have to have a specific answer. And this activity that I'm showing here uses the option called text box for answers. So it's in the text tool. Here you'll see in a moment, you can assign different equivalent answers that will be accepted for points. So especially when you're dealing with, decimal values, if you want to accept certain values, you can enter them. If you want to accommodate different, versions of a text, you can accommodate that, which you couldn't do in the drop zone. So we'll just see in a moment. So you can click on that, and when you go to add answers and points, you can include the number of points, and you can separate each of your answer options using a semicolon if you've got multiple options, which is the whole idea of using this. Something else you can do with Whiteboard.chat is to create escape rooms. I've got my hands on a really nice board from a different creator that's available on the community. So I'll use this to demonstrate how you can create your own escape rooms for different lessons. So let me first demonstrate this from a student's perspective. So let's open up a demo student. And once that loads, okay, so what the student sees here is a bunch of images, and you can click on each of these leprechauns, right? And you can see this clickable icon. And so once I click on that, it takes you to a different page on the board, which is essentially the escape room. So here, like we've seen earlier, there's a drop zone where you can add your answer options to. So let me just try that out. Let me get something. And there's an icon to check your answers. So the student can check and get instant feedback without the tutor having to autocorrect the board. So that's interesting as well. And then this time I've got it wrong. And if the student tries to proceed to the next page, they get this warning saying your score is too low, need at least 100%. So unless the student is able to solve this, get all the points, they cannot move on. So let me just actually get that right. Okay, once I've got all my points, I can now move to page 3 without any problem, and that reveals my first clue, right? And again, there's another link. This time it's to return to page 1. So you can go back to page 1. And so the student essentially walks through all these different rooms and tries and solve it, and then go back to page 1, complete all the activities, and that's how it goes, right? And then eventually the student gets to this, the final piece of the puzzle. So once the student reveals all the hidden letters and then makes up a word, then they can try to go to page 15. Here, it's not the points that you get, but now you enter the final password. So this, yeah, so if I enter something wrong, try, so let's say that, and doesn't do anything. So unless I know the password, I cannot exit this and complete the escape room. So that's essentially how this works. And this is really nice when working with students when you want to review certain material, especially prepping for an exam. So I'll show you how you can use the tools available in Whiteboard.chat to do this. So let's go to the instructor board. Okay. So first things first, let's look at how we can create this clickable icon that can take you to different pages. So let's first get an object. So you can do this with images, objects available in Gizmos, anything. So I'll just take that. And then you can see the 3 lines. Go to advanced edit and add link, right? So you can either take your student to a different website, or you can go to a different page in the book, which is what we want. So let's go to page 2 and then set it. So the clickable icon appears and you should be able to click and go to any page on the board, right? Then let's look at how we create the check it option, how we can sort of autocorrect for the student. So you go to widgets, once again, add link, right? And then autocorrect. Let's say, how many points? And that should give you an option for the student to check how much points they get. Okay, and then apart from that, if we go to page 3, you can go to different pages in the book. So you can call it go to page 3, maybe 5. And so you can create a link to go to different pages. Similar to what we did with an object, but even without an object, you can create this tab that takes you to different pages. Okay, so let's go back to page 1. And now let's look at how we make sure certain pages are only revealed if the student gets a certain amount of points or does have the password to it. So you go to thumbnail view and notice some of the pages have a lock in it. These are the pages that require a certain number of points or a password for the student to reveal them. So let me just, for the purpose of demonstration, toggle the password. I'll unlock that for the moment. And then again, now the student has access to that page without any problems. But once I toggle password, you get 2 conditions. One, based on your score from last page, from the previous page. So if you can have a percentage of that. So if you got 5 points and you want the student to get 5 points, you do 100% and so on. right? So unless the student has that amount of points, they can't proceed to this page. The other one which we saw earlier was a password. So you can set a password. It could be a solution to a problem, it could be a word, anything. And so the student has to type it to reveal the page. So you have these two conditions. So in this case, I'm going to set it to last page score and set it like that. So these are the features you have to create escape rooms, and it's pretty easy and it's very interactive way to get students to try practice problems and engage with the content that's available. All right, so what I've shown you is just a glimpse of the options available to gamify your lessons and incorporate elements that are more interactive and help engage students. But the possibilities are endless. So if you're looking for some inspiration, you can go to the community boards that are available. This is a collection of boards built over a couple of years from different tutors on various subjects like languages, you see maths, science, and for different grade levels. So you can either get some inspiration out of it by looking at the various ways they've created assignments and lessons, or even directly get them into your lessons as well by accessing the link for each of the boards. So yeah, I hope this video was useful and inspired you to create sessions and use Whiteboard.chat to make your sessions more engaging. All right, see you from another video.